Hello, everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by Joe Fordyce, our Flyers pre- and post-game live producer. Joe, the Flyers were coming off a really rough weekend on home ice. They got swept in a back-to-back set, and Rick Tocchet called out the team's will. He said he needed to see more will from guys. He thinks Flyers fans respond well to will. If they see some will, they'll cheer. If they don't, the team's going to get booed. The Flyers were able to respond on the road with back-to-back wins. How do you think they answered Rick Tocchet's message?
Well, I think, first off, they took his message to heart in the Montreal game by getting to the front of the net. I mean, every goal they scored in that game, someone was in front of the net, if not multiple guys. And you kind of had layers of guys in front of the net. You had guys that were getting in Sam Montembeaud's sight line, and then you had other guys positioning themselves for rebounds with room to work with, as we saw in the one Bobby Brink goal. And they came out and they set the tone for the game right away with the 3-goal first period. Of course, they gave up 4 and blew that lead, but eventually came back to win. And I think that's what some of what this team was missing in the last couple of years was kind of if they threw a punch and got punched back, there were no more punches. And I think we're seeing whether or not, if they throw the first punch, they're ready to throw a second one. And if they don't throw the first punch, they're ready to punch back harder. And I think that's what we saw in Nashville last night. They give up the first goal, but they come back, they score the next 2, and they're able to really hold on for a variety of different reasons. The goaltender, the defense, and continuously attacking, with that mindset of getting to the net. And, what I would say is it looked great for 2 games. I think it needs to look great on home ice tomorrow against Ottawa, and particularly Wednesday when Edmonton and Connor McDavid and them come into town, because that's a game where it could go 2 different ways. I mean, you have to either be locked down defensively, but more than likely you're going to have to score to beat a team like Edmonton. So I think the Flyers in the next 2 home games coming up here are going to have to show the ability to hang in games and win in a couple different ways.
The Flyers picked up a crazy shootout win over the Canadiens and then went to Nashville and beat the Predators in regulation. And Joe, Rick Tocchet on Friday talked about seeing his team show some resolve. And he really liked how when you don't have your A game, you got to win with your B game or your C game. He thought he saw that from the Flyers. It wasn't a perfect trip to Montreal and Nashville. In Montreal, they blow a 3-0 lead and have to really come back and eke one out in the shootout. And then in Nashville, I don't think they played a great game. I mean, Dan Vladar had to be very good on that night. But I think Rick Tocchet liked what he saw in that regard, that the Flyers were able to win when they weren't at their best. Is that a sign of a team that's maybe maturing and growing a little bit?
Yeah, and I think in particular, go back to the Montreal game. When they give up 4 straight and go down 4-3, in my opinion, the last 2 years, that game ends 7-3, something like that. They just kind of – the Flyers just kind of go away. They didn't do that in this game. And, they managed to scratch out a goal and then survive in overtime against a team that hadn't played in the shootout because they're so good in overtime that they – never get to a shootout, and the Flyers forced it to a shootout and then win in the shootout. The Nashville game, I agree with you. It's a sloppy game. It was one of those games where, I don't know, it felt like one of those games you see in a playoff series where you have 2 teams that don't really have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, but they're battling every single game, and you see these games where a puck goes in off somebody's leg or something like that. It felt like one of those games where it was going to be something kind of ridiculous that won the game. I wouldn't say that's really what happened. in particular when Konechny puts it away with the open netter or the empty netter. But it was they had to fight through the sloppiness. And they did that without compromising their defensive structure in the game. And I thought that was, I think a big sign of growth of the team for a team is learning how to win in multiple ways and be able to do it on a consistent basis. And I think what we're seeing so far, I mean, we're 13 games in, is that the Flyers are finding ways to, at minimum, give themselves chances to win. If I think back, I mean, really, it was only the one game, Winnipeg, where you could argue they didn't have a chance to win the game in the third period for much of it. But they're really growing up as a team in terms of keeping themselves in it. And goaltending helps, as we've talked about.
No doubt. Dan Vladar has been great. He's given up 2 or fewer goals in 7 of his 9 starts. So he has been really good. I think exactly what the Flyers had hoped for and probably even better. But the Flyers have played a ton of close games. They are 8-5-1 through 14 games. Half of their wins have come after regulation. 8 of their games have been decided by 1 goal. Joe, I think it's great that they're in these tight games. I think they can learn from these moments. I think we're already seeing that a little bit right now. But I also wonder if it's a sign that they could be an up and down team. They're going to be a team that might struggle to score one night, where their goaltending is going to have to be great. And they might be a team that struggles in net and defensively a little bit when they're scoring some goals. I'm not totally sure that the Flyers are turning a corner right now, but I think it's good that they're playing some close games and they're finding ways to win them.
Yeah, I think what I would say about that is if you just look at the message that had to be reinforced by Rick Tocchet, this was not a message that we hadn't heard before. We heard it at the beginning of the season. And so I agree with you that an up and down team might be what they are because the same message is having to be reinforced. And it was a few days ago, you're hearing questions to Rick Tocchet like, is the message just not getting through? It's kind of like when you have little kids and you have to tell them to do things, 3 or 4 times. It's not like you just say, hey, guys, make sure your room isn't a mess. And then it's never a mess again. That's not how it works. So maybe that's the case with this team. And they are a young team. So sometimes, the old – and listen, I think in yesterday's morning skate, or maybe it was the practice the day before, Rick Tocchet said in reference to the power play that it doesn't always have to be sexy. I would argue that would apply to all of it because, just passing the puck and getting to the net, that is not anything flashy. That's not that is your Rick Tocchet style of hockey. And I'm talking about not only him as a coach, but the kind of hockey that he played. It's your Scott Hartnell kind of hockey. It's the hockey that Philadelphia has grown to appreciate is the guys that are willing to go to the hard areas. John LeClair was a multiple-time 50-goal scorer because he went and he took abuse in front of the net. And I'm talking back in the days when you were allowed to just pound the guy in front of the net with cross-check after cross-check. Those are the kind of players that I think old school players, old school fans, they appreciate that. And it isn't the kind that you're going to see on the top plays of the night. It's not your Connor McDavid style highlights. But if it wins games, I don't think anybody's going to be complaining about it. And right now, it's winning games. I mean, I feel like the times this season where we've seen Rick Tocchet come out and seem most frustrated, that next game, you're seeing some of their best efforts. And I think that says something. And it's not like it's just against bad teams. I mean, they went into Montreal, took his message to heart, blew a 3-goal lead, and still came out with a win. I think that says something a lot about how the message is getting through from the coach to these players.
And to me, really, the overarching theme of these low-scoring, close games are the Flyers are preventing goals. That's not a bad thing. It's a sign that they have some answers in net, which everyone has been pleading for, and that they're really playing a way that I think Rick Tocchet wants to play, and that's play a calculated game, take chances, but also have possession with the puck, eliminate odd man rushes the other way. So the fact that they're preventing goals, I think, is great. I think the offense will come. They might be a Jekyll and Hyde offensive team from time to time, but they have enough guys where I think they're going to score goals. And as long as they're in games, even if it's low scoring, if they're in games, I think that's a real positive for the Flyers in year one under Rick Tocchet, where he's implementing a new system, a new way to play. I think it really starts from the back end out, and the Flyers are getting good play from the back end. Defensively, they've been fine, and goaltending in net, they've been very good. And that's, I think, a really good start.
Yeah, well, I mean, with your comment there about Jekyll and Hyde, think about it. They have Jekyll and Hyde players offensively. Konechny, streaky player. Some he goes, we've seen it. He was on pace for almost 50 goals last year, and then he had a dreadful slump that was, I don't remember the number, might have been something like 15 games without a goal. Owen Tippett, we've seen it. He's in the midst of one right now. He was the hottest player in the league for a stretch, and now he hasn't scored a goal in a little bit. Or, and not to say he's not visible in these games, but like you said, Jekyll and Hyde, the players individually, I think their top forwards could probably each claim to be Jekyll and Hyde. So collectively, you're going to get a Jekyll and Hyde offensive effort from this group. And I think that's what you're going to see. But if the consistent thing is they don't allow a ton of goals, they get solid goaltending, in some cases great, and solid defense, you're going to be in most of the games. And I think that's the way this Flyers roster has to play that way, because they don't have that top-end skill. They don't have the guy that's going to score 45 goals. They don't have multiple 100-point or 90-point guys. They just don't. So I think John Tortorella had it right in that this team has to prevent goals first, because they don't have that top-end talent that's going to fill the net every night. Yeah. So, again, I will go back. I think there was some good groundwork laid by John Tortorella here. And I was just asked about that by a couple of people the other night. And I was saying he came in and he laid the groundwork basically like, if you want to start at zero, you have to play this way. And then you go up from there. But there has to be a floor. And your floor is to play the game the right way. And I think he instilled that in a lot of guys. And we've heard Rick Tocchet even give him credit for that too. So I do think that he deserves some credit here for some of that. And then it looks like Tocchet's system on top of the stuff that Tortorella instilled here, so far is a good combination, 13 games in.
I agree. And I really liked the response in these two road games, because I did think the back-to-back home set was pretty lousy. It just wasn't good enough, and it's punctuated by a loss to a Flames team that was at the bottom of the NHL standings coming into the game. And it really soured what the Flyers had done in their previous home games, where it was looking like they were starting to get on a roll. So for the Flyers to respond the way they did, they win a game in Montreal where they blow a lead. Joe, as you mentioned, it's probably a game they lose in the past. Instead, they dig deep and they find a way to win it. And then to build on that, so often we would see the Flyers in the past get like a real quality win, and you're starting to buy in a little bit, and then the next night or the next game, they fall flat. Instead, they pick up consecutive wins on the road, and now they have a chance to come back home and kind of build on it. And Joe, one guy that I think has really helped, as we mentioned, good defense, has been Cam York. He just looks like a different guy under Rick Tocchet. Just looks like a different guy with more opportunity. He's finally playing on the power play again, and he's putting up points. Just looks like a real confident playmaker, a guy that they drafted over Cole Caulfield for a reason. They believed he could be this good. Are you seeing a guy that just looks like he has a fresh start, and that's really been a huge reason why he's playing this way?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I'm going to go back to a John Tortorella term for York. He's looks like he's been allowed to surf a little as a defenseman, kind of patrol that whole top of the zone and pass the puck, shoot the puck, as we saw from Zegras' assist to him the other night. We're kind of seeing all facets of the game from York right now. And I also think what you're seeing is a guy like Zegras, the way he can kind of penetrate the zone lower in the zone gives York more room to work with at the top of the zone. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there is a aspect of Zegras that none of the other Flyers forwards possess. And it is that little bit of flashiness where you can beat a guy with stick handling. And I don't know that they've had that prior to this year, where a guy can stick handle his way in between the circles, get into the slot, and therefore you're giving your defenseman more room to work with at the top of the zone. So I think that's part of it too, because so many times I feel like in the last couple of years, you would see Cam York get the puck and somebody's on him right away, and it causes a turnover. Or right away, he feels the need to go deep in the zone, and then it leaves the top of the zone exposed. And I feel like what you're seeing now is the full capacity of York's game. And I think Zegras has really brought that out in him, because Zegras, and I think the one day we were at practice, we were watching Zegras and Konechny working on over on the circle. They're working on the circle of how you just kind of skate a little bit toward the dot, back off a little bit. And you're kind of, it's almost like if you think about it like a hard count in football, you kind of get to the line and give a hard count to maybe get the defense to show you a little bit of what they're doing. Yeah. And then you back off and you wait for the lane. Zegras did it the other night when he threw the puck in front of the net, which ended up in a power play goal. He wasn't shooting the puck. And Rick Tocchet brought the play up several times. But I don't feel like prior to this year that the Flyers had guys that were A, good enough skaters, and B, good enough stick handlers to affect the defense in that way and kind of keep them hemmed in down low, particularly in the power play, leaving room up top for a guy like York or Drysdale to work. And I think that's what you're seeing now. So I think it's the addition of Zegras, and we know these guys know each other well from the Southern California area. I think the addition of Zegras has helped York immensely and kind of helped him look like a totally different player, as he mentioned.
It was really interesting when York talked to the media in July after signing his contract extension and mentioned his chemistry with Trevor Zegras from their time in the U.S. program. And they were on that loaded U.S. team that had so many first-round picks in York's draft year. And they came up through that program together. And he mentioned, hey, we have some chemistry from the power play in our days with the U.S. program. And I mean, he had a great point, because already we're seeing it. Those are the two top power play producers already for the Flyers in this early going, Zegras and York. And like, you can see the chemistry there. So he was right. I think it's great that the Flyers have tried them out together on the power play. And York just needed to be back on the power play, period. But just to tell you how much he's impacting the game already offensively this season compared to last year, last season did not have a single multi-point game. This year, he already has 3 multi-point games. So he just looks like a different player offensively, and so much of that is opportunity. And that was a huge storyline for the Flyers, was this year they had to get Cam York looking like the guy that was 2 years ago when he played in all 82 games and he was a top pair defenseman. Like, he's going to be a huge guy to their future. And I think early on, we're just seeing very good signs. You know, he hasn't answered the bell totally yet, but very good signs under Tocchet that he could be a top pair guy that's going to put up points and you can rely on him.
Yeah, and I think he is taking every advantage of something that Tocchet talked about the other day after practice, when he said that in reference to the power play in particular, and a lot of the stuff we're talking about with York revolves around the power play, and it should, because that's a big piece. The Flyers needed someone to run the power play. And Rick Tocchet talked about how when the opposition is playing high on flankers, the puck needs to go low. And we see a lot of work down low on the power play. And I think last year when the Flyers did have success on the power play and they looked good on the power play, it a lot of times came from Michkov working low. And I think that's a way to work low to high. And when you have a guy like York back there, and when you get the puck from low to high and he has space to work, I think it's a whole different thing. And I think that's why you're seeing really a different looking power play. I mean, coming into last night's game, they're in the top half of the league in the power play. 14th they were. I mean, I don't think anybody before the season would have said, well, this power play is going to be in the top half of the league after a dozen games, 13 games. I don't know that anybody would have predicted that, because that's pretty quick work in 13 games. And of course, a training camp and all that stuff. But, we heard Rick Tocchet at the end of the training camp. It's not like they had this is our power play unit. And quite frankly, the Flyers' second power play unit has been better than the first for a lot of the season so far. So it's not as if the lineup was set in stone. You don't have a McDavid-Draisaitl power play out there. So to have the personnel that they do and to have this much of an improvement so far, I think is a real credit to everybody involved, the coaching staff and definitely the players, namely Zegras and York.
Yeah, you do wonder when the Flyers acquired Trevor Zegras in the trade in the offseason that part of their thinking was, well, hey, he played with Cam York in the past. He was a teammate of Jamie Drysdale's. Perhaps some chemistry, particularly with York, but also with Drysdale too. That maybe that would be a good thing for both players. York was needing a rebound. Zegras was needing a fresh start. Perhaps some familiarity would go a long way. And so far, I think we've seen the Flyers get the benefit of that, no doubt. And Joe, before we wrap up, how just clutch was that Matvei Michkov goal for a few reasons? The 1-1 goal that tied the game on Thursday night, and the Flyers go on to win 3-1. It's a big goal because the Flyers really needed some offense. And for Michkov, it snapped a 9-game drought without a goal. And you have to wonder, for a kid like him, he sees the puck go in the net. Perhaps that's a sign of more things to come.
Yeah, I think it's for sure. I mean, we saw the frustration, and it seemed like it was mounting with him game after game. I think it's a huge goal, and also huge too, because he had a couple of really rough shifts prior to the goal last night. 2 turnovers in the one shift I can think of, and one of those back in his own zone. And I felt like for a little bit there, his offensive game was sort of getting sniffed out by the opposing team. He would kind of come inside the blue line, curl, and then look for a guy in the middle of the ice. But then, as we noticed, and to his credit, he was still able to get the puck to the middle of the ice a couple times. But we would notice Michkov curl inside that blue line and just get annihilated by 2 players. Yeah. Again, credit to him for still getting the puck to the middle, but I think his tendencies started to show up on film. So some adjustments need to be made. We saw where he scores this goal from last night, right from the middle of the ice. And also, you got to point out here, the play Bobby Brink makes to keep this alive while sitting on the ice is a really great play. And then Michkov, I think we need to see Michkov more in between the circles like that. I know he's a winger. I know he's got a great shot from the circles and outside. But if you work more toward that part of the net, I think his skill set will come out even more. And, that's what we want. He's here to score goals. And that was him scoring a goal from a goal-scoring area. And I think too much so far this year, we've seen him playing in non-goal-scoring areas, throwing blind passes, kind of trying to do a little too much of the stick handling. And I think if you get back to the basics, he's a goal scorer. Get to the goal-scoring spots, remain responsible defensively and not flying the zone when they don't have the puck. And I think we're going to see a much different Michkov, and hopefully last night was the first step in that.
Absolutely. When he first arrived here, everyone talked about, yes, he's incredibly skilled and flashy offensively, but he had a nose for the net. People said that he wanted to get to the net. He knew goals were scored around that area. And I think that can only help him when he realizes that if he's in a little bit of funk, go to the areas where the goals are scored. And he's so skilled that, Joe, I agree, that area where he shot that puck from in between the circles, I mean, he's going to beat goalies there. He does not need help. Once he gets the puck on his stick, he will beat goalies from that area. If the Flyers can get him the puck like Cam York did there in that area, man, they're going to get him going a little bit offensively. I think they're going to see the scoreboard light up a little bit in their favor. So,
yeah, and I think if you look back at the video, the close-up replay where you see Michkov's reaction after he scored, I know he doesn't know a lot of English, but it's getting better. And if you look closely, I think he might say thanks to Cam York.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. And I almost feel like he was not only saying thanks to York, but thanks perhaps to a higher power for allowing a goal to score for him, because it had been, like you said, 9 games. And I just found that funny because I looked at it a couple times and I'm like, I think he says thanks there when everybody comes around to celebrate, which is pretty funny.
It was great. And you can see York go up and pat him on the head multiple times saying, way to go, you know, good job. So I think Cam York knows how much Michkov loves scoring and how much that fuels him. And when the kid doesn't score, you know, he's frustrated. So I think York knows how much that was a relief. And here he is right there. If you're watching our YouTube version of the podcast, you can definitely see Michkov very grateful for York to find him on that play.
Yeah. And I really think too, you know, everybody on this team, I think, realizes that this is not going to work if Michkov doesn't turn into what they've said Michkov is. So it's a collective effort. A player no player makes himself into a superstar without other players around him. Alex Ovechkin has 900 goals, but I guarantee you, if you talk to him, he would credit guys like Nick Backstrom and TJ Oshie, guys that he played on the power play with. A guy like Michkov, a goal scorer, no goal scorer makes themselves a goal scorer by themselves.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think everybody knows that, and it's a collective effort because they know this team is not at their best unless Michkov is playing the way the team has told everyone he can play.
Yeah. So some good vibes for the Flyers as they come home, a couple of road wins in their pocket, and now they have 2 straight home games. And I think Flyers fans are really hoping that they see a different product on home ice compared to that back-to-back a weekend ago. So a big couple home games for the Flyers to really build on what they've done so far. 8-5-1. They're really responding well to Rick Tocchet, and they're in a good position early in the season to make up some more ground and continue to develop this season the way they had hoped under Rick Tocchet. Joe Fordyce, thanks so much. As always, you can always catch out Flyers pre- and post-game live before and after every Flyers game, produced by our very own Joe Fordyce. A big thank you to Spencer McKercher, our do-it-all video producer, for helping us out here on the Flyers Talk podcast. And Flyers fans, as always, thank you so much for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, please rate and listen, and we cannot wait to talk to you next time.